Hello and welcome to the latest This is the Music Meets podcast. I'm delighted to be joined by South London solo star Ashley Stacey. Over the course of today's episode, we're going to talk about Ashley's new single, Do You Feel?, his band The Morning Sun, live music and lots more. So Ashley, welcome along to the This is the Music Meets podcast. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Great stuff. Absolute pleasure to have you on, and loving the little background there that you've got going on. Obviously, little nod as well to Ashley Stacey in the Morning Sun, and we're going to come on to that in a little while's time, as we said. But obviously, as you know, here at This Is the Music, we like to shine a light on new bands and solo artists, you know, like yourself, who are sort of like making their way onto the on the music scene. So kind of like over the last like 12 months or so, have there been any bands or artists at all that have really caught your eye?
I've been loving Pastel. And funny enough, because we bumped into each other, didn't we? At a Pastel gig.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
So yeah, nice little link there to get that in early. Loving Pastel. They're brilliant. The Lathams.
Yeah, really like them as well.
Yeah, really good. Nice melodic tunes, and great vocals and great guitars. Stanley's, who we actually supported the other day. They're great.
Yeah, they are.
It always puts me on the spot. This Affleck's Palace as well, obviously, on the same label as Pastel, that Spirit of Spike Island label.
Yeah.
Another really good band.
Yeah, there is. It's obviously such a great time, isn't it? I think for guitar music at the moment, and obviously, as you say, there's sort of 3 or 4 bands there that you've picked out. I think it's fair to say are right at the right at the forefront of what's going on. I think really.
Yeah, definitely.
And obviously, as you just mentioned them you've recently supported sort of friends of the podcast, Stanley's. You was obviously at the Old Blue last, wasn't you, in London?
Yes.
So how did the set go for you?
Oh, it was brilliant. It was really, really good. So it was just the 2 bands, so it's just us and Stanley's. Obviously we were on first, and it was just one of those nights where the sound engineers got it spot on. You know, in the sound check, we took the time. We had the time. Because there was only a couple of bands, and we took the time. We got it right, so we could hear it really well on stage. And thankfully, that sort of shone through when we were playing, I think, as well. Funny enough, I posted a video of a song from that gig, "Empty Sky."
Yeah.
Our first band gig was at the Old Blue last, and I'd forgotten that, and it was about a year ago, just over a year ago. And I'd forgotten that I posted a video of the same song from that first gig. Honestly, it's a complete coincidence. I've completely forgotten.
Wow.
And I've watched the 2, and it's a lot better. It's a cut above, you know.
Yeah.
So looking at that, it's nice to sort of see, we are improving. I think one thing is the vocals for me is just they were a lot better. And I don't know if in the first gig, because it was the first gig we did was a sold out gig for This Feelings, so it was still a really big gig. And obviously the pressure was on for the first gig, but we embraced that. But I don't know if I was sort of overcompensating with the sort of not showmanship, but like trying to presence and giving it your all. That to some degree the vocals took less of a forefront, and this time round, because I could hear it so well, especially I think. I was really focusing on the vocals, and I think, like I say, I'll compare it just to see how we're doing, and just sort of like see where we could improve and stuff like that. But I watched it back and I was like, yeah, those vocals are so much better. So it's nice to think that we've learned something through performing, basically.
Yeah, and I think that's quite. No, go on, carry on.
I was going to say it went really well. The crowd were mostly there for Stanley's. Obviously, we had some fans along, but I'd say the majority were for the band. So it was a full room, and you always sort of think when you're supporting, if people were there for another band, you never know how it would go, I guess. But I think like even by the end of the first song, we had the room sort of like taking attention. Like these guys, like they seem to like it. and the crowd were on side. They were loving it. When we come off stage, I was like, that was wicked. You know, we gained more followers from it. Got some wicked feedback from the crowd, and yeah, stuck around to watch Stanley's, and it was such a good night. Probably my favourite gig I've played, and we've done a few decent ones now, some good venues, but that was right up there. That really enjoyed it.
Oh, that's great to hear, and especially what you were just saying there as well about the feedback from people that obviously attended. I mean, me personally, I kind of like feel that's actually the best ways, you know, like word of mouth. You know, getting your name out there, sort of trying to almost do it a little bit organically type of thing, rather than, you know, just sort of someone picking you up off a shelf and just chucking you, you know, like a named, you know, brand type of thing, just pushing you out there. I think it helps you grow, I think, a little bit more as an artist, personally speaking.
Yeah, I agree. It's really organic. You know, it's a good way to do it at the end of the day, because you know you're there you're playing music to people, so you want people to like the music, and if they're there and you sort of you've proved yourself straight away if they've had a good night. Do you know what I mean? So then they're going to go away and check it out and come to another gig. So I think supporting bands like that is a really good way of growing the fan base for sure.
Yeah, definitely, and obviously as well, just I think it's about August time, I think roughly. You obviously supported Dermo, who was obviously the front man. Obviously, for those that are not aware, the front man in Northside, a band who were at the forefront of the sort of early '90s, sort of like baggy sort of sound. So how did that support slot come about? And have Dermo or Northside really, I guess, have they kind of like had any influence on you as an artist at all?
To be completely honest, I've not had influence from them, but I had listened to a few of their tunes before, because someone put me onto them previously. So I was contacted by Adored, and they basically said, look, we're putting on a club night at Lexington, are you interested? And I was like, yeah, it sounds great already, because I've been to that venue. It's a good venue. And he said it's Dermo, yeah, and he explained, he was like, yeah, Dermo's from Northside, and I was like, right, yeah, and I was like, yeah, I'm aware of them. That was a really good night. It wasn't with the band, it was solo acoustic, that one. And I do a lot of solo acoustic gigs, but mostly covers gigs, you know, just to sort of in pubs and stuff like that, to sort of make a bit of money and to sort of get a bit of practice and stuff like that. But this one was like, no, they Adored were like, we found your original tunes, we really like them, and we want you to come and do originals. But yeah, solo would be the perfect sort of warm up way to do it. So do you want to do it? And I was like, oh, that actually sounds pretty cool, because I had done a couple, maybe one sort of local solo originals gig, and I was like, yeah, I'll come and do that. So that was really good. I actually like sort of doing, you know, showcasing the tunes in that sort of way. It's a bit different. You know, I had some of the people that know the tunes singing along. And it went really well, and just, you know, got to meet and hang out with Dermo and the guys at Adored, who are wicked. They're really good promoters, actually. And yes, I stuck around afterwards. I watched Dermo. His set was great, and then there was a club night after that, so I ended up partying till the early hours. So I woke up with a bit of a sore head the next day.
Brilliant. That's the best way. The best way. Hey, living rock and roll lifestyle to the full there, by the sounds of it.
You've got it sometimes, haven't you?
Absolutely. And just sort of, again, sorry, sticking with the live music theme. I know obviously you've played like the Water Rats before, so you just mentioned the Lexington as well, that are and obviously Old Blue Last, obviously really sort of iconic, you know, like grassroots venues across London. But you've obviously also as well played the 100 Club in London, which is probably the most iconic venue, I guess, in London for, you know, in terms of the size and the capacity of it and stuff. So I'm guessing that probably was like a real kind of like a bucket list moment for you.
Big time, yeah. It's obviously we were supporting Wilfie Williams, who is the online busker, is sort of what is it, online busker, the viral busker, because he doesn't play online. He busks in the tube stations in London, but he did a video. I think it was just after lockdown, And obviously everyone was up for it, and he was there playing. I think it was Twist and Shout that went viral. Went viral, and then
Yeah.
he was on the news and everything. It was massive. So he's got a big following from that. And I'd actually met him once upon a time in Bexley Heath, and bumped into him, and I knew who he was, and I really liked his music then. And I introduced myself. This is going back years ago, but I barely played guitar at the time.
Right.
And I just said, "Oh, Wilfie, by the way, I know who you are, and I'm a bit of a fan." And I had a pint with him. And then years later, he started when he realised that I was making music. He took a bit of an interest in that because he knew who I was as well.
Yeah.
And and then when it comes to play, he said he was playing the 100 Club, and he was looking for support. And I said I put us forward, and I was like, mate, I'd love to, if you think we're up to it and that. And he goes, let me come and see you at one of your solo gigs. So he came along, had a chat with him, and he was like, yeah, I want you to do it. And we played that with the band. We had a decent crowd along, and another one where the sound was really good. And it was wicked. Another really, really good night. It was exactly like you say, bucket list thing. Like, I couldn't believe we were doing it and we were on that stage. And it just went really well. Like, the crowd were loving it, we were loving it. And again, another one that went to the early hours, and there was a big headache in the morning. But
there's a bit of a theme going on here, Ashley.
Hopefully not too much of a recurring theme. But yeah, no, it's a really good night, and it was an honour to play there. So yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, and obviously we're just saying there about sort of like it's great to hear as well that there are artists prepared to support other artists as well. Like what you were just saying there, the little story and that. I think that's personally, I think that's great to hear.
Yeah, for sure. That's what it's about at the end of the day. Do you know what I mean? Because everyone needs to get out there and get their music out there. And sometimes one musician will have an opportunity to help out another, and it's reciprocated in that. And there's space. Well, there's a lot of good music out there, of course. But yeah, I think bands should all be supporting each other, because you see a lot of people that are sort of, I won't name any names, but like slagging off other bands, and, there's all this stuff going on like that. And I just think, what is the point? Do you know what I mean? We're here to enjoy the music. And also, worse than that, I sometimes think that people are actually doing it, they want to get attention and to get bigger. Like, it's less, they're not even doing it naturally. That's a pretense, like, in my opinion. And I just think, it's not the right way of doing it. I don't think in the long run it does anyone any favors, because it's the music that needs to do the talking. And in some cases, some of the tunes might not be too bad, and you start doing that, and people think, well, it can put people off. It's not the 90s anymore. Noel and Liam did it really well. Some of that I think was quite tongue in cheek as well. It's just. The times have changed. It's not like that anymore. I think bands should be looking out for each other, really.
Yeah, definitely. I agree wholeheartedly there with what you've said. And we sort of kind of touched a little bit there on the band thing. So obviously, I know when I first came across you, I think it was Palace Pier, I think it was. Obviously, you were predominantly a solo artist. But we're sort of, I think we're about 3-4 weeks away now from the anniversary of your single The Morning Sun, which was obviously the first single that you released with your band, which is called obviously The Morning Sun.
Yeah. I couldn't think of a title.
So kind of like, then why did you decide to go from being just a solo artist? So I don't mean it just solo artist, but being a solo artist to then being, effectively like being in a band type of thing.
Okay, so when I was making solo music and putting tunes out there, to be honest, I would have loved to have had a band at the time, but it's just something that hadn't sort of happened naturally yet. So the tunes that I was making were not so much done in the studio, but worked with producers, and we'd always layer them up, and make sure they had electric guitars, had bass, had keys. Some of them would have synthetic strings and stuff like that. But yeah, so the tunes were kind of made with one day playing with a band in mind, really. So like I said, when I play covers gigs, I would sort of do acoustic versions of them, slip them into the covers gigs or the odd, like I say, originals gig that I did. But yeah, in a way, it was kind of like I'd hoped one day to be able to play them with a band. Yeah, I didn't necessarily know if it would happen or not. But then what did happen is that I would make the records and I'd put them out there and send them out to the promoters. And like I say, the first gig that we did was for This Feeling. So they came back to me and said they were digging the tunes and they gave us an opportunity to play the Old Blue Last. And so I don't necessarily know. They realised at the time that I didn't have a band, and you know that they just sort of booked it on the basis that they like the tunes. Yeah. So I was like, right, well, if they like the tunes, I've got to make sure they sound up to the record. So that there was a bit of pressure there because I think it was 3 months' notice or something like that for this gig. For them to start talking about it, to then actually it happening. Because obviously at first it was just could you potentially do it, blah blah blah, and then it was like, right, we're going to book you for it. So in that time, behind the scenes, I was like, right, I've got to get a band together. I had a bass player sort of lined up who suggested a drummer. We got an electric guitarist on board, and yeah, it went like that. We got into a rehearsal room, and fortunately, it sounded pretty good. It sounded good enough, in my opinion, pretty quickly because they were all proficient musicians. So yeah, it sounded good, and then it was just a matter of sort of really nailing it down, getting a bit tighter, getting the sounds right. And yeah, and we've been going ever since. There's been a few sort of member changes for various reasons, but where we are now, the drummer's been with us all along, but the bass player we've got now is brilliant. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it to the Stanley's gig, so we had a stand-in who we know very well. She's great, and she actually played on some of the songs she played on Do You Feel in the studio. Yeah, so she knows the tunes as well, and yeah, she's brilliant. But yeah, the members we have are really committed and full time, and yeah, we just want to sort of keep building on it now. Now we've done some good gigs and we've got some good records in the bag. It's like let's get out there and do it.
Yeah, and it sounds like then it sort of added to you as a live artist as well as obviously on record as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because playing with a band, you learn a lot. Because when you're sort of solo, doing it for you and you're playing acoustic, but when you're with a band, it's like you learn how you've got to sort of let the rhythm fit in, the rhythm guitar and stuff fit in with the rest of the band. Same with the vocals. You've got to know where there's space. You just got to think about. Yeah, there's a lot more to think about, and yeah, and again, playing. Recording is very different with the band in mind because you've got all the members there and you want to get them on the record and it's just a completely different process. But yeah, that's definitely the sort of the progression that we've made and the way that we'll carry on going.
Oh, great to hear. And obviously you just mentioned it there in that little bit there we're just chatting about obviously your new single, Do You Feel? It's full of groove if you've not heard of it, and it's also got a gorgeous jazz influenced key solo as well in there in about halfway through the song. So yeah, basically, what can you tell us about it?
Yeah, so it was recorded at Tileyard Studios in London, and yeah, live drums went on first. So we there are drums, live drums on some of the other records. Some of them have synthetic drums, but this one we went in and it was done. It was done properly. The drum kit was set up. We went into the studio and we ended up recording all the drums that day for a few tracks. So obviously you guys have only heard one so far, but there's more to come.
Oh, exciting!
Because we got the drums out. Yeah. Got the drums out. We got the bass down. Like I say, Alicia played the bass, and it was just a really different process because we wanted everything that went on these records to be real because some of the previous ones would have guitar amps that have been played through things like Logic or some of them have got synthetic strings on them and things like that. And we said, look, whatever goes on this one, let's make it real. So it's got a proper, authentic live feel, recorded in a really, really good studio. You touched on you touched on the keys. So that's my friend Tom Monks, who's an amazing musician, and he's actually produced some of my previous tunes as well. And he played the keys on it. So he's not played with us as when we've done a live band. So when we do the sort of live band, it's really sort of raw electric
Yeah.
rock and roll. And so not to say at some point we might try and incorporate that, but you add sort of another person, and it's more logistics, and you got to get a keyboard along and stuff like that. But yeah, when we were listening to this record, it was like when you can hear what it needs, and it was like that. Yeah, that's what it needs. It needs some sort of really, like you say, jazzy, bluesy, sort of grooving keys to sort of drive it along. And yeah, he was the main man. We got the James, our lead guitarist. He laid down that really filthy, dirty guitar solo to the end. It's towards the end. It's really sort of I think it sounds really sleazy. I love it. It's really sort of broken up and bluesy, and it's perfect. It's perfect for the track, I think. Yes, I'm really happy with how it come out. I think it's got energy. I think it's everyone sort of gives you sort of their take on it, and that's all good. But in my eyes, I was like, I think this is rock and roll. I think, and it sounds good, and it's been going down really well live actually, and it's only been out since Friday. So what are we 4 days in, and it's been really well received. And you kindly made it track of the day as well, didn't you?
I did it.
Yeah.
I was going to say
I stole it for you there, didn't
Yeah.
I? I stole your touch to steal your thunder there.
Read my
Sorry
mind.
about that.
No, not at all. No, I was going to say actually about the reaction, because it has been really, really good from what I've seen across your socials, and obviously as we mentioned earlier, I think that word of mouth sort of scenario I think it's great to see, and long may it continue, personally.
Definitely.
And also as well, just as we mentioned there, the socials. When I was going through sort of doing a little bit of research for this, I couldn't help but notice that you did a fantastic cover of the iconic football song Vindaloo. Obviously, with the World Cup being on, it was quite poignant, really. So,
Yeah.
would you ever consider releasing that as a cover? Obviously, I know you did The Importance of Being Idle on your EP from last year. Or would you maybe consider, maybe for the next tournament, maybe doing like an original football song?
Oh, that's an interesting point. Doing an original one, because you have these sort of theme songs. Like I did put out a Christmas single a couple of years ago, and I'd never intended to do that. But what happened is one day I sat, funny enough, at the keys, because I don't play much keys really, but I'd got a new keyboard, and I was like, I sat there, and this Christmas song started coming. Some chords and a little riff came out, and I was like, oh, that's that lends itself to a Christmas song. So I wrote one. So yeah, I would not be against trying to do, but I've got to be honest. I'm not the biggest football follower. When it comes to the tournaments and competitions, I always get involved. But I support Man United for my sins, and I'm obviously a Southerner. So I've been to Old Trafford once for football, once for something else as well. But it's I can't claim to be the biggest football fan. So I'd be a bit of a fraud, but like I say, if it was sort of England or tournament related, and a song came out, then I wouldn't be against it. Would I do a cover of it? No, probably not. And I'll tell you the reason. I got booked to play in a pub. I'll give it a shout out. The Summerfield in Lee in London, and it's they wanted me to play after the England match, right after the match. So he goes, "Have you got England tunes?" And I was like, I've played Three Lions at gigs before, covers gigs. And he was like, "Oh, wicked, yeah, Vindaloo." And I was like, "Oh, do you know what? I've never done that." And I was like, I'll give it a crack." And I started doing it, and I was like, "Oh my god!" I was honestly, when I started doing it, I was like, "This song is ridiculous." I was like, "I don't know how I can bring myself to do it," but I was like, I was enjoying it so much because it's so ridiculous. I ended up keep going with it. I finished it, and I was like, "Actually, sounds all right." So that's why I was like, I sent it to him. He went, "That's wicked, mate." And then I was like, "Right, I'm going to share it." So I shared it. And then, funny enough, when was England? It was yesterday. It was yesterday.
Yeah.
I think it in the pub, and I shared my story. I don't know if you saw it, but this pub was packed. and everyone in the pub, like all these geezers, are like singing along. They've all got their phones out. They're all chanting. And honestly, it was just like I was so glad that I did persevere with it, because it was such a good moment after we just won 6-2, and everyone in the pub is singing along. Do you know what I mean? It's like, oh, it's great.
Great stuff. And at least as well, you were honest about the Man United scenario as well, because a lot of people wouldn't admit that they've only been up there a couple of times and that. So
no, do you know what? As a kid, I loved football in the 90s. I was never, and this is another thing, I was never great at football. I wasn't a bad basketballer randomly. I was quite good at that, so I sort of was more into that back in the day. But yeah, like football, I wasn't great at it, so that I didn't getting into it that much. But I loved it in the 90s. You know, when United had Cantona and Giggs and Scholes and Neville, and you know, it was a real good time. And yeah, probably you could call me a glory hunter, although my dad does support United, so that's probably I'd call him a glory hunter.
Yeah.
But yeah, back then the football was magic, but it just doesn't have that same magic feeling for me anymore. And you know, I'm not going to force it, but tournaments do have the magic. You know, I've watched quite a few of the games so far, and probably will watch as many as I can. But yeah, you know, each their own in that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and as you say there, with the especially obviously with England in the last couple of tournaments, I think that that magic of the tournament is just sort of you know, hit home a little bit more. I think is probably fair to say. And you have just mentioned it. We're going to talk as we talk about cover songs. You obviously wrote a Christmas song a couple of years ago. Have you got a favourite Christmas song, and would you ever consider considering releasing that as a tune in the future?
Do you know what I think? Because I did obviously, as you mentioned, the importance of being idle. Funny enough, it's had like less streams than all of my originals. So the reason I did it was because I thought, well, because I'd done an album, 10 original tracks on the album, and I was recording an EP, which had 4 original tracks. So I was like, and I know other artists that have done a lot less output than that and have included more covers. So I was like, am I missing a trick here? So I was like, right, let's do the importance of being idle. It'll be a bit of fun. I do love that tune. I do play it quite a lot acoustically. I was like, let's do it, because you know it might be a good shout. And like I say, you never know how these things will go, but I was quite interested to see that it had less interaction, less streams than the originals. So for me, it's kind of like, well, then I'm not going to waste sort of time, money into doing too many covers. Obviously, when we play band gigs, we'll throw a cover in.
Yeah.
I think you're rehearsing it with the band, it gives you the freedom to sort of, you know, do a new one and throw it in. Whereas when you're producing and putting one out, that takes the effort, and then people expect you to then cover that. And again, we've covered that at gigs before, and it got the same sort of reaction as the original. So then you think, well, you know, if that's going to happen, you might as well just be doing originals, you know?
Yeah.
So,
sure.
yeah, I don't think I would consider what you said there, but what's my favourite Christmas song? I love, it's a bit of an obvious one. It's a love or hate one, but Fairy Tale in New York. It's just wicked, you know. I just love it. I love his like really sort of the way that he does the vocal on that. Their vocals are both brilliant, but he's just, you know, he just sounds like he's drunk, and he's like slurring it out, and it's got so much charm, that song. So yeah, I'd choose that. I think is
definitely
my favourite Christmas song.
Yeah, absolutely. To be fair, he probably was drunk when he was doing that. He was doing the vocal.
Yeah.
If you are listening,
exactly,
please don't sue me, please. I've got nothing.
And, you got a nice man cave there.
Yeah, that's about all I've got. Yeah, I've got nothing else to give. And if you had a musical time machine, what era of music would you like to be transported back to?
Oh, that is a tough one. See, my favourite era of the Beatles, although I've just realised I'm wearing a sort of early Beatles top.
Yeah.
So this is very contradictory, because I like the later stuff more personally, when they got experimental with it. But then a lot of that they didn't play live, so I'd be going back to an era where I loved the music, but you know couldn't necessarily see them playing it. because obviously they stopped touring when it all got a bit mad, didn't they? So they're releasing some of the albums that I think are the best then. Yeah, I love the Kinks as well. So I do like the '60s, but I think it would have to be probably sort of early to mid '90s to see, you know, Oasis in their prime. You know, like, well, when I say in their prime, my favourite period of Liam's vocal was really early, like say like '94. You know, when they did Glastonbury the first time round.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
loved that. King Tut's to go and see them at King Tut's. I love the rawness and the youthfulness in Liam's voice. I know he probably did get better, but for me, I preferred it right at the beginning. So yeah, I'd probably go back to then the Kid Catcher, the Lars, see Lee Mathers at that sort of time, and you know, they were amazing. I did see them once in 2005, and they were wicked then. But again, his voice was a lot more mature, let's say. So yeah, I'd go early to mid. I'm very diplomatic there. Early to mid '90s, and there's loads of bands about then. Do you know what I mean? You could have caught sort of Blur, Radiohead, you know, just the loads really, and catching them at them sort of bands at their early gigs. Yeah, that would be the time for me.
Oh, excellent. A very, very exciting time. And you've kind of like just
Yeah.
touched on it there. Obviously, the Beatles, the Kinks, obviously it sounds like Oasis as well. Are there any other bands or artists maybe of like that are musical inspirations for yourself?
Yeah, definitely. So two massive ones that I've not mentioned. Arctic Monkeys and Alex Turner in general, I think, as a lyricist, because you know I love all the Arctic Monkeys stuff, but he's you know, obviously Last Shadow Puppets are great. He put out that Submarine EP, which is just superb. And when you look at Color of the Trap, Miles Kane's first album, and look into the credits of that, I think he wrote quite a large majority of
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Maybe more than as people have like maybe more than you know anyone knows. You have a sort of sneaking suspicion because he actually did a cover of Color of the Trap once on a like Quiet Radio, and that sort of it definitely sort of has his style in it. So and that tune's probably Miles Kane's best tune in my opinion. But yeah, so yeah, Alex Turner, he's absolutely amazing, and Pete Doherty and the Libertines, another massive one. Again, I'd say just Pete Doherty because I've seen him so many times solo, and this is going back a long time as well. I got into him sort of ages ago, and you know, Baby Shambles' first album, I absolutely love. But both of those guys, I think they're poets as much as they are musicians. And they're both of their styles of writing have had yeah, probably a big influence on me because I I sort of think lyrics often come first for me. If something doesn't sort of catch my interest lyrically, sometimes it can't sort of keep me pulled in. Like there's a lot of bands that I like their sound, but there's not enough substance in the lyrics to get me, you know, really into it. So it needs to have both, you know. But yeah, I'd say out of influences, those two are up there as the biggest. And like you say, we said about Oasis. I'm a massive Noel fan. I think he's one of the greatest, if not the greatest, songwriter of all time. So yeah, that you know they've been a big influence too. But I think you have to be careful with Oasis because they've got such a style and almost formula. If you go, you know, you've got to be careful not to be ripping it off really.
Yeah.
But no doubt it subconsciously, you know, it all goes in there. So sometimes these little bits and pieces come out, I guess.
Yeah, sure, definitely. And kind of like what I mean, obviously some great choices in there, and I think you've pretty much covered my own personal record collection as well. So it's good to hear,
Nice.
you know, people with with similar interests and stuff, really.
Yeah, for sure.
Um,
Yeah.
but kind of like
Looking at your pictures there as well, like
yeah, I think you can,
yeah.
yeah.
That's all I did. I just look, what's he got? What's he got? I just say all of those and then
Brilliant, love it. So what then has the rest of the year got in for Ashley Stacey then? Are there going to be any more gigs in the pipeline? Maybe more new music, or are we looking now towards 2023?
A bit of both, really. I think there was talks of us putting on our own sort of big homecoming gig in December and getting a few bands onto that. But whether we do that or not now, I don't know, because actually we've all got a lot on. I'm doing a lot of the solo gigs, and just a lot on with sort of personal life and stuff like that. Obviously, we just had the great Stanley's gig. That's brilliant. I think if anything sort of good comes in, we might take it, but I don't think we'll put on the one we're thinking. We might do, but I'm not going to commit to that. But yeah, in terms of new music, I mentioned earlier the single. We're going to put the next single. Well, we've recorded a few, and it's because we've got an EP coming soon, and we'll put out the next single of yeah. That's I'm so proud of this EP, and I can't wait to put out the next single. The next single is probably the tune that I'm sort of is my favourite of all the ones we've recorded. I'm definitely really happy and proud of that one. So can't wait to put that out. I've not sort of announced it anywhere yet, but I would expect it would probably be towards the end of January that we'll put that out. Again, some kind of release gig for that, whether we do it for a promoter or because we're in touch with certain promoters that offer gigs and stuff like that. So whether we tie it in with one of those opportunities, then that would be great. Or again, might put on our own one. And when the EP comes out later in the year, we'll do a big launch party for that, because we'll hold at least a couple of tracks back for that.
Right.
And so just a lot just with these new tunes that we've taken our time to record. We're just going to sort of get the most out of these, and enjoy ourselves putting these out, and playing the new tunes basically.
Wow, well, it certainly sounds like a very exciting time for you, and obviously it sounds like a little exclusive there as well with with the single announcement. Well, not quite announced, but we'll take that. Towards the end of January. I'm going to hold you to that date now. And as I've said throughout the podcast, obviously like getting that word of mouth type scenario out there, I think that's obviously working really, really well for you, and it's something that I personally wholeheartedly love to see, that type of thing. Unfortunately, Ashley, that is the end of the podcast. Thank you very much for coming on the This Is the Music Meets podcast. It's been a real joy getting to chat to you and not having to actually shout at you like what we were at the This Feeling Pastel gig earlier on this year.
In front of the bar staff, they're like, "What are you
that's
it."
Absolutely. But just,
mate, thank you very much.
Not a problem at all. But just before you do go, can you let the listeners know what social media platforms you are on, so that they can go and check you out?
Instagram, Ashley Stacey, that's one of the main ones. Facebook as well. I think if you search Ashley Stacey Music to avoid, getting the personal profile. But yeah, I'm on there quite a lot. I'm on Twitter. I think that's Ash Stacey Music. I have a TikTok and I put some videos on there, although I don't I don't know how to do that. What all these mad things that people do. I don't bother with all that. I just stick a video up there and see what happens.
Yeah, I'm the same.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to, haven't you? You kind of got to be there. But yeah, I'm not one for getting too involved with that sort of stuff. But yeah, those are the main ones. You can find me on all those, and obviously Spotify. Get on the tunes on Spotify and stream the F out of those. I don't know whether I was allowed to swear or not, so I censored myself.
Very impressive. We don't mind. That's great stuff, and we're going to include those links to Ashley's socials in the episode bio, just to make it a little bit easier for everyone to find him. And obviously, as we've said and discussed, Ashley's new song, "Do You Feel," is out now across all streaming platforms, and as Ashley has just said, stream the F out of it, because it is a fantastic single. All that is left for me to say is thank you to everyone for tuning in to the latest This Is the Music Meets podcast. We will see you all again very, very soon.